It started with a scream. Not mine, not yet. Someone else's voice, high-pitched, raw, too close, too real to be some club trick. The kind that cuts through bass-heavy tracks and clinks of glasses, slicing the air like a broken bottle. I was backstage at Eden Lounge. Friday night. Black lace, heels, glitter that clung like regret. I remember adjusting my makeup in the cracked mirror, fake lashes trembling with every blink, when it came again, louder this time. The kind of sound that makes your gut knot before your brain can catch up. Then, silence. And that was worse. I stepped out into the hallway, heart ticking like a bomb. Something was wrong. The crowd noise had vanished, replaced by shuffling, thuds, and gurgling. The lights flickered. The smell hit me first. Like meat left out in July. I rounded the corner, past the curtain leading to the floor, and saw her. Marissa. Another girl from the stage. She was bent backward over the bar, eyes wide and rolling, mouth moving but making no sound. And above her, some guy, or what had been a guy. His face buried in her throat. My brain refused to make sense of it. Then he looked at me. And I ran. 12 hours earlier. Boston was just waking up, and so was I, though waking was generous, more like crawling out of a NyQuil haze and stale vodka. My head throbbed like the bass lines I danced to every night, and my phone was dead, again. No messages, no missed calls, not that I expected any. Friday started like every other. Coffee, aspirin, a half-hearted shower. I checked my stash, $40 and some change. Rent was overdue. My landlord, Barry, was a greasy creep who liked to check in too often, especially when the rent clock ran out. He'd knocked twice this week. I figured one more knock and he'd let himself in. I pulled on jeans, a hoodie, and headed out to grab smokes from the corner store. The city felt off. Sirens blared more than usual. A cop car screamed past, then an ambulance, then another. People stared at their phones like they were watching the world end on a livestream. Outside the 7-Eleven, a man stood barefoot, his arms bloody, mumbling to no one. Jesus, I muttered, giving him a wide berth. The clerk inside was pale and sweating. His hands trembled as he rang me up, glancing nervously at the security feed on his monitor. You okay? I asked, out of instinct. He looked at me, like seeing me for the first time, and said in a whisper, something's happening downtown. They say, people are attacking each other. I laughed nervously. You mean like riots? No, he said. They're eating people. I stared at him for a second, waiting for the punchline. None came. My stomach turned, a cold pressure settling behind my ribs. Outside, more sirens. A helicopter buzzed low overhead, banking toward the financial district. I should have gone home. Should have locked the door, filled the tub, waited it out like people do for hurricanes. But I had a shift to cover. Rent didn't care if the world was ending. So I went in. By nightfall, the world was already unraveling. I ran. Not like on stage, not with rhythm or grace, barefoot, stumbling, snagging my fishnets on the hallway corner. My shoes were still by the locker, along with my jacket and my phone. None of it mattered now. Behind me, the thing that used to be a man snarled. Not a shout. A snarl. The sound of hunger without humanity. I burst into the dressing room. Sasha screamed. Danny dropped her phone, shattering the screen. Back door. I shouted, grabbing my duffel and fumbling inside for the tiny pepper spray keychain I'd been meaning to replace for a year. Something's in the club, it bit Marissa. I think. The door burst open. It moved too fast. eyes clouded white. Blood caked its chin. It lunged at Sasha and tackled her into the makeup counter. Glass exploded. She screamed until her throat went wet and ragged. I didn't think. I couldn't. I hit him, with the metal side of my makeup case. Again. And again. Until he stopped moving. Until Sasha stopped screaming. Danny stood frozen, eyes leaking tears. What the hell is this? I don't know, I whispered. But we have to go. Now. We ran through the back hall, past the storeroom, past the exit door that stuck unless you kicked it right. I did. Twice. It slammed open to the alley, where the stench of urine and old beer had never felt more like fresh air. Out in the street, people screamed. Not nightclub screams. Real ones. Horns blared. A car crashed into a light pole, and something was dragging itself across the hood. The city was tearing itself apart. I had no plan. No one to call. But I still had Danny, breathing hard beside me, and whatever this nightmare was, we weren't dead yet. We ran east, toward the blue flicker of police lights, hoping for safety, praying for answers. Behind us, Boston burned red beneath the velvet night. We made it 5 blocks before everything went to hell, again. Downtown was a war zone. Sirens wailed from every direction. Helicopters circled above like vultures, searchlights dancing across rooftops. Fire bloomed in the windows of a department store. Smoke clung to everything, turning the night into a coughing blur. People weren't running anymore. They were scattering. Screaming. Bleeding. And those things, the biters, the infected, whatever the hell they were, moved like sharks in a pool of panic. They didn't moan like in the movies. They hissed. Growled. Climbed on cars. Tore at flesh with blackened fingers and hungry teeth. Danny tripped. Get up! I screamed, yanking her arm. Her knees were bleeding. Her mascara had run down to her chin, and her eyes were wide, glassy. They're everywhere, she whispered. I looked around. She wasn't wrong. A man was pounding on the inside of a city bus, his hands smeared with blood, passengers inside clawing at the doors. One by one, the windows began to crack. Behind us, something thumped, wet and sick, against a dumpster. I didn't look. There was no time for fear. Only motion. There's a guy I know, I said, half to myself. Drives for Lyft. Owns a van. Parks near Tremont. You think he's still alive? I didn't answer. I didn't need to believe it. I just needed a direction. We cut through an alley, climbed over a fallen fence, bolted across a churchyard where candles still flickered from someone's forgotten vigil. Boston had become a ghost story being written in real time. The van was still there. Silver, scratched, dented. But the keys were in the ignition. And blood was smeared across the driver's side door. I froze. Danny touched my shoulder. Alice. I opened the door. No one inside. Just an empty soda can rolling on the floor and a cracked iPhone buzzing with missed alerts. I climbed in, heart pounding, throat dry. Danny slid in beside me. I turned the key. The engine coughed, then roared to life. Relief hit me like a drug. The kind I hadn't touched in a year. We were moving. Away from the carnage. For now. I didn't know where we were going. Maybe north. Maybe west. Anywhere but here. Danny started crying quietly, head against the window. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just kept driving, eyes on the road, hands tight on the wheel, watching as my city dissolved in the rearview mirror, smoke, fire, and red lights blinking like the last heartbeat of a dying body. This wasn't survival. Not yet. This was just the start of the reckoning. We didn't speak for a long time. The hum of tires on broken asphalt was the only sound inside the van. Boston was shrinking behind us, its glow still visible in the mirrors, orange and red, like the horizon had caught fire. We passed wrecked cars, toppled light poles, a flipped ambulance. Everything felt abandoned. Like the world had been vacuumed out and left to rot. I glanced at Danny. Her head leaned against the glass, fingers trembling in her lap. She hadn't stopped shaking since the alley. She'd stopped crying, though. I wasn't sure if that was better or worse. "Hey," I said, voice hoarse. "You still with me?" She nodded slowly. "Good. 'Cause I'm not doing this alone." Silence. Then, softly, "Do you think it's everywhere?" I didn't know. But I wasn't going to lie. "Yeah," I said. "I think it is." We rolled into a gas station on the edge of Newton. Lights were dead. No power. I parked behind the building and killed the engine. The sudden silence felt unnatural. Inside, we found snacks, warm water bottles, a half-empty first aid kit. There was blood on the floor near the back, and something had knocked over a rack of sunglasses. I didn't want to know what. We barricaded ourselves in the office, pushed a filing cabinet against the door. I found a hand-crank emergency radio under the desk. The kind they sell for hurricanes and snowstorms. I turned it on. Static. Then, a voice. Weak. Warped. "This is CRK, Emergency Broadcast System. The outbreak has spread nationwide. Repeat, nationwide. All major urban centers, containment failure. Quarantine zones compromised. Seek rural refuge. Avoid population centers. Trust no one." Then it looped. Danny stared at the radio like it had cursed us. "That's it," she said. "No help? No rescue? Sounds like we're on our own." I found a faded road map. Spread it out on the floor. The radio kept repeating. "Trust no one." The words echoed in my chest like a second heartbeat. "Where do we go?" Danny whispered. I traced a finger west. Toward the Berkshires. Forest, space, fewer people. Maybe hope. Maybe not. But it was something. I looked at her, finally letting the truth fall from my lips. We survive. That's it. That's the plan. Outside, the wind picked up. A trash can rolled. Somewhere in the dark, something groaned, long and low. We weren't alone. Not anymore. By morning, the world was quieter, but not calmer. We left the gas station before the sun rose, hoping to avoid whatever hunted in the dark. The van rattled over cracked roads and empty intersections, past overturned trucks and abandoned police cruisers. A dog barked somewhere in the ruins of a strip mall, then whimpered and fell silent. We headed west. Into the pines. Into the cold. Massachusetts has forests that feel like they remember things. Old stone walls from long-dead farms, trails overgrown with secrets. That's where we aimed the van, into the woods, where the world used to be quiet, before phones and pandemics and blood on glass. Danny sat with her knees tucked to her chest, staring out the window. She hadn't spoken much since the radio broadcast. Her silence pressed heavier than the trees outside. I pulled off the main road near an old logging trail. The van wouldn't make it far, but it was cover. And we were low on gas. We hiked half a mile in, just far enough to lose the road behind us. Pines towered on either side like silent sentries. The ground was soft with needles, the air sharp with cold. We found a cabin. Small, rotting, half swallowed by moss and ivy. Probably someone's hunting getaway from 30 years ago. Inside, it smelled like mildew and forgotten dreams. But the door had a lock. And there was still wood stacked near the rusted stove. We could make it work. We spent the afternoon boarding up windows and checking for food. Found 2 cans of beans, 1 expired jar of pickles, and a half bottle of Jack Daniels. It wasn't hope, but it was calories. Then, just before dusk, voices. Not groans. Not the inhuman shrieks we'd heard downtown. Real voices. Male. Close. I dragged Danny to the floor, heart hammering in my throat. We listened. Cabins up there, looks empty. 3 of them. Footsteps crunching on old needles. One laughed, sharp and cruel. I say we torch it. Nothing good in there. I looked at Danny. She was pale, lips trembling. I mouthed, don't move. I raised the pistol I'd taken from a security guard back at Eden Lounge. Just 10 rounds. I hadn't even fired it yet. They came closer. One peered through a broken slat in the boarded window. Hey, wait. I didn't let him finish. One shot through the slat. Another through the gap above the door. I missed the second. But they screamed. Shouted. Ran. Footsteps thundered away. Leaves crackled. Then silence. Not peace. Never peace. But we were alone again. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Danny leaned into me, shaking. People, she whispered, almost sobbing. People are worse. I didn't answer. She was right. The fire had burned low. Pinewood crackled, glowing like embers of a dying star. Danny was curled on the cot, finally asleep. Her breathing had steadied, but her hands still twitched, like even in dreams she was bracing for impact. I sat by the boarded window, pistol in my lap, thumb brushing over the worn grip. 8 bullets left. 8 goddamn chances between us and whatever hell waited out there. The silence had weight. Like the forest was holding its breath. Then I heard it. A twig snapped, close. Too close. I froze, every nerve screaming. Another step. Then whispers. They were back. I slid off the chair, crept to Danny, shook her awake. She blinked groggily. What? Shoo, I breathed. They came back. She stiffened, eyes wide in the dark. Then the door exploded inward. Wood splintered. A man, bearded, eyes wild, barreled through. I fired. He screamed and stumbled back. Another man tackled me from behind before I could squeeze the trigger again. Gun clattered to the floor. My breath left me in a grunt. I kicked, clawed, but a third man pinned me, his sweat-stained hand clamping over my mouth. Danny screamed. A sickening thud. Silence. The first man limped in, clutching his arm, blood soaking his flannel. Bitch shot me. One of the others laughed. Yeah? You'll live. They tied our hands with extension cords, gagged us with strips of curtain. My heart hammered so loud it drowned out everything. One knelt close, his breath sour with rot and whiskey. We were gonna leave you alone. Then you shot at us. Now? He grinned. The kind of grin that had nothing to do with humor. We're gonna drag you back to camp. Show the boys what real women look like. You'll warm beds and beg for scraps. Until we get bored. Then. His knife flicked out, traced along my collarbone. Then we'll decide how useful your pretty skin is. The others laughed. It wasn't even joy, it was hunger. Predatory. The laughter of people who believed the old rules were dead and buried. Danny was shaking, eyes filled with tears. I could see it, her spirit folding, the last fragile thread of hope tearing. They hauled us out, stumbling through the woods. Night pressed in like a coffin lid. The gun lay forgotten on the cabin floor. I counted every step. Every root and turn. Every shadow. Because I wasn't done. They thought we were prey. But I was still breathing. And I was going to kill them. All of them. They dragged us for what felt like miles, deeper into the forest, down old logging roads and animal trails. My wrists burned from the cords. My feet ached. Danny stumbled often, one of the men would yank her upright with a cruel laugh. You'll love the camp, the tall one sneered. Got a whole setup, tents, fire, food. And the boys? They're gonna love you. I didn't answer. I kept my head down, heart beating slow and steady. But something was wrong. The woods had gone too quiet. The usual night sounds, owls, distant wind, the creak of trees, were gone. Smothered. The air itself felt thicker. Electrified. I wasn't the only one who noticed. The one holding my rope stopped. Shut up, he whispered. You hear that? We all froze. Silence. Then, crack. A branch behind us. Subtle, calculated. Not the stumble of a deer. Another crack. Closer. Deliberate. What the hell, the limping man said, reaching for his knife. It happened in a blink. Pfft. A whisper of air, and his head jerked back, a neat hole blooming between his eyes. He dropped like a marionette with cut strings. Before the others could react, 2 more shots, pft, pft. The tall one spun, blood spraying. The last man fell forward, arms twitching. Dead. Just like that. I stood frozen. Danny sobbed quietly behind her gag. Then they stepped out. 5 figures. Ghosts in the trees. Camouflage so tight they seemed to bleed from the forest. Each held suppressed rifles, movement crisp and controlled. One approached us, tall, silent, face hidden behind a matte black mask and tactical goggles. Secure, he said into a shoulder mic. Then he knelt beside me and cut the cords binding my wrists. You're safe now. His voice was low, professional. But there was something human in it too. Tired. As if he'd seen too much already. Another freed Danny, gently removing her gag. We heard shots earlier, he said. Tracked them here. Found the cabin. Found your weapon. He handed me my pistol, reloaded. My fingers trembled as I took it. Who are you? I asked. The leader didn't give a name. Just, Special Recon Unit. Attached to a Northern Command outpost. We're scouting active zones, clearing hostiles. I blinked, still dizzy. You mean, there's still a military? He nodded once. Small pockets. Most are gone. We're not here to save the world. Just protect what's left. He turned to 2 of his men. You stay with them. Get them back to the cabin. Clear the area. Rest of us, move on the camp. One soldier knelt beside the corpses, checking pulses out of instinct. Clean kills, he muttered. 3 down. More in the hills. The leader looked at me. Can you walk? I can fight, I said, voice steadier than I expected. He nodded with respect. Then they were gone, vanishing into the woods like wraiths, heading toward the camp where hell had once waited for us. The two that remained moved like sentinels, silent and ready. For the first time in 2 days, I felt something that wasn't fear. It wasn't quite hope. But it was the memory of it. And that was enough. 2 hours passed in slow silence. The cabin had never felt so quiet. Even with 2 soldiers inside, their presence like statues, motionless, listening to the trees, the air was still thick with aftershock. The fire crackled softly. The smell of pine mingled with ash and fear. Danny sat beside me on the cot, a wool blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her face was pale, but not hollow anymore. There was color in her cheeks again. Blood pumping. Life asserting itself. I cleaned the pistol again. Just muscle memory. Something to keep my hands from shaking. The taller of the soldiers, Rook, the younger one had called him, stood by the door, eyes fixed on the window. The other, bulkier, said nothing the entire time, just occasionally moved his gaze across us, checking, scanning. Then, a signal. A faint double click from the comm unit on Rook's vest. He pressed his mic copy. He turned to us. It's done. My stomach tightened. The camp? He nodded. Neutralized. 4 more. No prisoners. Gears being stripped. Fires out. I didn't ask for details. The rest of the unit arrived minutes later, stepping out of the woods like a returning patrol of ghosts. One carried a small, blood-stained rucksack, probably supplies looted from other victims. Another had a map tablet, now folded in and secured. The leader, the one with the soft voice and haunted eyes, came inside. "We're moving out," he said. "You have a choice." He looked us in the eyes, steady, respectful. "There's a secure facility west of here. Underground. Shielded. Staffed. We can take you there. You'll be safe. You'll be fed. Or you can stay here. Go your own way. No pressure. No chains." Danny glanced at me, her eyes brimming. I didn't need to ask. "We're coming," I said. He gave a slight nod. Good. Outside, 2 camouflaged Humvees waited in a makeshift clearing. Silent engines. Matte paint. Roof turrets inactive, but ready. The inside smelled like oil and leather and years of war. They led us right up front, next to Rook and the leader. We drove for hours. Through forest trails. Across broken highways. Past a collapsed overpass where the skeleton of a Greyhound bus hung over the edge like a dead animal. No one spoke much. But I listened. Heard chatter in code. Brief reports. Mentions of Sector D and quarantine intake. At last, we reached it. A steep incline. A reinforced tunnel mouth hidden beneath camouflage netting. The gate slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing metal and floodlights and armed guards in full NBC suits. They escorted us inside. Down long, echoing halls. Past checkpoints. Past decontamination stations where we were stripped, scrubbed, scanned. Quarantine. A plain white room. 2 cots. A window, real glass, reinforced. Food arrived on trays through a sealed slot. They told us it was protocol. 72 hours. For their safety. 4 hours. We didn't argue. For the first time in days, I slept without flinching. And when I woke, Danny was still beside me. And we were still alive.